Yeah, Muhammad, shall we start?
Go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Sarah Al Muhsin, Communication and Public Relation Officer at Saudi Aramco Nabors Drilling. It's the leading provider for drilling in Saudi Arabia. Today, we are presenting Impossible is Nothing, presented by Rahman Akhtar. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any question during the presentation, please type them into the box that you have down in the Zoom panel. Now, without further ado, we will turn time over to Rahman Akhtar, our presenter for today. He's a career guidance practitioner in Management Professional Development Department at Saudi Aramco Human Resource Organization. Rahman Akhtar was born in Pakistan and he moved to London at the age of 4. He has a bachelor degree in mechanical engineering at the City University, London. He's a postgraduate student at Cranfield School Management, and he worked for many large multinational corporations in UK as an IT consultant before moving to Saudi Aramco 20 years ago. He has a varied career at Saudi Aramco as sub-consultant, training and change management, communication, and now Human Resource Professional Development Department. He had a lifelong passion for public speaking and motivating other professionals. He has mentored people from undergraduate level all the way to executive on speaking with impact. He is one of the founders of stand-up comedy scenes in Saudi Arabia. He has appeared on BBC TV show and traveled around the world to be master of ceremonies at large events and to perform comedy. So, good evening, Mr. Rahman. How are you doing today?
Hello, assalamu alaikum, Sarah. What a lovely introduction. Thank you. You're making me breathless, just taking me through all these different points in my life and all the stuff I've done. That's great. Making me feel very old as well. I've been in Saudi Arabia
for more than 30 years, so well done.
Alhamdulillah.
We're excited to hear from you tonight.
Thank you, Sarah. That's very, very nice, and really impressed with your punctuality. We started bang on 6 o'clock. Well, it's 6 o'clock right here in Dhahran in Saudi Arabia. You find me in my home in the Aramco residential camp. I am so excited to be spending this hour with you, and I really hope that I'm able to inspire and maybe even a little entertainment along the way as well. But thank you, Sarah, for that lovely introduction. I understand that we've got over 120, maybe 130 people online, which is fantastic. You've got the luxury of being able to see me, but I can't see any of you. So I'm going to assume that you're all nice and relaxed. You're in a quiet place and that you're focusing for the next hour, because I promise you that I am going to try to give you very, very good value for money for the next hour or so, as we take a little run through my life and see if we can notice some of the traits that perhaps we can learn from, whether we're a leader or whether we are a member of staff and looking for a leadership position later. So thank you very much for the PMI KSA chapter for inviting me to be the guest speaker for this month, and you can probably tell how excited I am. And if you just advance the slides here, right? Let me ask the very first question. Who is Rahman Akhtar? Sarah's given you the standard kind of background and my education and things, but you know, it's very, very difficult to put a label on yourself, isn't it? It's very hard to say, well, you know, what do I do in life? Well, first thing to tell you is that I'm a very happy person, as if you can't already tell. I smile a lot. I really believe in positivity. If I were to put a title on myself, I would say I'm an HR professional, I'm a communicator, I'm a facilitator, I'm a runner, I'm a comedian, I'm a friend, a father, a grandfather, a brother, a son, and so much more. And aren't we all? We bring all of these kind of roles from our lives into our jobs, into our workplace, and we take all of our roles that we do at work, and we sometimes take them home. So I don't really believe in this work and home kind of divide. We do take parts of our personality into work, and we do bring some of our work home. I work, but you're not here to listen to me as a father and a grandfather, a brother, a son. You're here today because I happen to be a career guidance practitioner with the Management and Professional Development Department within the Saudi Aramco Human Resource Organization. And I've had the blessing of being able to work for them for the last 20 years of my life. Wow. You know, when I first came here in 2001, if you had said to me that, Rahman, 20 years from now, you are still going to be in Saudi Arabia and working for this great company, I would have been so shocked. I would have been so surprised, because I come from a background in the UK where, you know, every 3 to 4 jobs, 3 to 4 years, you would kind of tend to look at the next job, at the next opportunity. And sometimes that meant moving departments, and sometimes that means moving companies. But there are certain things you pick up from each job. Now, as Sarah mentioned at the beginning, there will be time for question and answers. So as you listen to me, if you think of questions that you'd like to ask me, or if there's something kind of you want to resolve, please make a note of it or put it in the chat box. Write it down in the chat box, and Sarah will be keeping an eye on that. So that's my kind of credentials, I guess. In my job roles, I've worked in financial services, I've worked in retail management, and then I came into IT, information technology. I became an SAP consultant, and that's what brought me here to Saudi Aramco in Saudi Arabia, where I took part in then the world's largest go-live, the world's largest implementation of SAP anywhere. And it was a very exciting time in our lives. 2 years later, Saudi Aramco made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and I became a direct member of the workforce here. So I became what is called a direct hire instead of being a consultant, and the rest is history. What an amazing, amazing 20 years it's been. I came here with a wife and 2 little kids, and those 2 little kids are now married and have kids of their own. So what a wonderful life. So let's kind of focus really now on the aspect of today of resilience. But before I do that, let's just take a bit of a helicopter view at the kind of skills that we're looking at in the job market of today compared to, let's say, even just 5 years ago. So I'm going to quote from a Future of Jobs report by the World Economic Forum. In 2015, they came up with this top 10 list of attributes that you should be displaying in the workplace. And yes, the top ones are really obvious: complex problem solving, coordinating with others, people management, critical thinking, and so on. And no one would argue with these top 10 that, of course, they're really important traits to have when you're in the workplace. Now, fast forward just 5 years, and the same organization did the same report, and check what they came up with as a new top 10 in 2020. Now, we have the normal ones, the complex problem solving, that's still there at number 1, which is quite, understandable. And then you've got critical thinking and stuff as well. But hey, look at the first change here. Where was creativity back in 2015? Right down there at number 10. And it's gone up 7 places to number 3. And why is this? Well, I'm sure that a lot of you managers out there, a lot of you project leaders will know that there's a new products out there, there's new technology, and there's a whole new way of working, which requires creative people to take advantage of these changes. And people management is still there, up there, of course. And now look at another change. If you look at something like active listening, which was at number 9 back in 2015, what has that been replaced by? Look at number 6 in 2020. We no longer just need people who listen to their people actively, but we want people who are of emotional intelligence. So we're looking for managers and leaders and supervisors who have the emotional intelligence for what we call compassionate leadership. Because in my experience, especially in Saudi Aramco, the compassionate leaders who really understand their people are the ones that produce the high flyers. And of course, this is not a definitive list. It just happens to be the top 10. So I did a bit of brainstorming with myself just before this session. And I don't know whether you would agree with me, but the other desirable qualities are things like resilience. And that's going to be the subject of my talk today. Agility, we hear this word all the time. Organizations need to be agile. And what bigger test of our agility have we faced than the last 7 or 8 months, right? The coronavirus, the pandemic, has really tested our agility and ability to pivot as businesses and as people more than any other time in our lives, and more than any other time that we're probably going to be tested. And I'll be talking a little bit about how I've been agile in a while. So, compassionate leadership, I've already talked about that. We're looking for people who challenge the status quo and who have an awareness of things like artificial intelligence and of social media. And there's another report. There's another report that also says that we are going to have artificial intelligence represented on the board of companies before long. By 2026, there's going to be a representative of artificial intelligence actually on the board of the company. So amazing times to come. So that by a little way of a background gives you a foundation to what I'm going to be talking about. But let's focus on the title of my talk, which is how being resilient can help your career. Now, whether you are listening as a young professional who has just come in to working for a large corporation or even a small business, whether you are listening as a project manager who needs to understand this whole area of resilience, I hope that you enjoy this session and you get something out of it. So let's define, first of all, what resilience actually means. And this is according to the Cambridge Dictionary, English Cambridge Dictionary. It says, first of all, resilience is the ability to be happy, successful, etc. Again, after something difficult or bad has happened. And who sitting in this session has not had some challenge in their lives? I would venture to say nobody. Secondly, it can be defined as the ability of a substance to return to its usual shape after being bent or stretched or pressed. And we all get bent and stretched and pressed at work and at home, but it's our ability to return to our usual shape. All right. So that really kind of defines the word resilience in the context that I mean it today. Now, rather than give you lots of examples of how we can do this at work and how we can't, how about I take you through a little bit of a journey through my life. And I would ask that as I am talking to you about what I have been through in life, that perhaps you think for yourselves, where do you see all of these words coming in? Agility, compassion, and ability to cope with resilience, adaptability, and about the adaptability to change. So I'd like you to think while I'm talking about that, make some notes, and I'd love your feedback at the end of this presentation. So I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, that impossible is nothing. I'll take you back to when I was around 9, maybe 10 years old. And this is what life looked like for me. I'm afraid that it wasn't a very good start to life. I had a very challenging beginning of my life. It was, to cut a long story short, I was living in London. I'd moved from Pakistan at a very young age at 4, and I stood out in the area where I lived. I stood out in the class. I was one of the only little brown kids in the class, and I was the victim of a lot of physical violence. I was bullied a lot at school and in the area where I lived. And so the first impossible that I had to face in my life, I've had people tell me that things are impossible all my life, and I've spent my life proving them wrong. So the first impossible I was told by the world is that it's impossible for you to beat your bullies. I was told it's impossible to take control of your life. Everything around me screamed that at me. I was told that you are a victim of your environment. How many of us blame our environment? When things don't go right at work, in the office, when you don't get that job that you were really looking for, when you get posted to that remote location you didn't want to go to. How many of you go into that victim mentality? Well, this was a possibility for me at this age. Like I said, I was just around 10 years old then. But I decided to prove everybody wrong. I can't tell you what made me feel this strong, but I decided that I was going to prove people wrong, that I didn't need to be a victim. And I chose a weapon. And the weapon I used to fight back was a microphone. There was a competition announced, you know, this is back in the day where we didn't have America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent. And I know that we have people listening from the UK. I also understand we've got people obviously all over Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. We've got people from Pakistan listening here, but you will all be very familiar with the whole concept of America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent. There was a talent contest, and I decided that I was gonna get up there and speak to 300 people in the audience and do some stand-up comedy. I could tell a really mean joke even in those days. And ladies and gentlemen, at the end, when the prizes were announced, they announced third prize, they announced second prize, and to my amazement, they announced first prize with all 6 judges giving 10 out of 10. The winner is Rahman Akhtar. And I just held my head in my hands, and I could not believe what was happening to me. I was exactly 11 years old back then in 1974. And it was the day my life changed. It was the day that I realized that you do not have to be a victim of your circumstances. You can prove yourself in any difficult situation. You just have to find your strength. You have to find who you really are and to be very confident. So from that day on, dear listeners, I decided that I was never going to be a victim again. And you will not believe what a fantastic difference it made to my life. I was passionate about flying. I just got it into my head I wanted to be a pilot. And I was told by the whole world around me, Rahman, what do you think you are? You're a teenager. I was about 13 at the time when I got the flying bug. And all I wanted to do was pilot a plane. I was told it's impossible for a teenager to fly a plane. Again, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but without any resources, without hardly any money, no connections, nothing, I proved them wrong. By the age of 16, I was one of the youngest solo pilots in the UK, and I was flying gliders in the air and living a dream. It's only legal from 16 onwards in the UK, so I think if it were legal at 14, I would have been up there somehow. But can you see that newfound freedom and that kind of ability to see beyond the ordinary, to see beyond the possible, beyond the impossible rather, and to make it possible? Don't worry about your resources. You know, once you start a venture in life, all manner of things are going to happen around you that you would never have dreamed they would happen. And people connect to you, and you get networks, and you find a way through, inshallah. So that was another thing I found, a huge change in my life. Whatever I felt I wanted to do, I could do it. The next impossible that was presented to me was, it's impossible to make. I was offered the job by Saudi Aramco as a consultant initially. I thought, wow, I've been living in Saudi Arabia. I was in England all my life. To move to Saudi Arabia, so far away, to a company I'd never even heard of. Honestly, I'd never even heard of Saudi Aramco at that stage. But you know, I had a secret weapon again. My wife Shafia, so strong, and she has so much faith. She said, Rahman, let's do it. You know, what's the worst that can happen? We can fail. And she gave me the strength to move with our 2 little kids, Nadia and Wasim. They were like 3 and 5, I think, then. And we moved to Saudi Arabia. And what an amazing, amazing decision it was. So we proved them wrong. We proved them wrong. And what a blast it was. We came to this country, and honestly, the last 20 years have been an amazing place to bring up our kids. And of course, there were things to get used to. There's so many cultures and so many customs, but me being from a Pakistani background, it was an incredible pleasure to suddenly be living in this Muslim country, and especially to be able to fly to Makkah and Medina anytime I wanted. And there were so many advantages in the safety and the relative security. We made a life here, and we proved ourselves wrong in that. So we weren't daunted by this huge change management exercise we had to do. We showed flexibility, you know, and we showed this ability to move on and be creative about our lives. and we were resilient. So hope you can see that link there with the attributes you need as you go through work and the changes you presented yourself. I was a stand-up comedian from that day onwards. When I was 11 years old, the comedy bug really got me. And as soon as I got here, I looked at the environment around me and everything was screaming at me, it's impossible to do comedy in Saudi Arabia. Okay, I looked around and I thought, you know what? You might think that Arabs don't laugh, but they're pretty funny people and they have a great sense of humor. And I thought, let's prove them wrong. Let's prove the naysayers that stand-up comedy is possible in Saudi Arabia. Now, the one thing I realized is you had to make the comedy halal, Sharia compliant. So the comedy of the West was never going to work in Saudi Arabia. So we made it respectful. The comedians on my show, Rahman and Friends, were told one thing. If there is a father in the audience with his daughter, if there's a mother in the audience with their son, I want none of them to feel uncomfortable with anything you say on stage. So we didn't go to the usual comedy you get in the West, but we kept it very respectful. We kept it very halal, as I said, and look what happened. The show Rahman and Friends became a huge hit all over Saudi Arabia. And we're talking about 10, 12 years ago when comedy didn't exist here. And so there was an element of risk and challenge in doing this, but we changed the status quo, but we just were respectful of the rules. And the ethos behind my comedy show was that we want mixed audiences. We want male, female, we want young and old, we want Arabs, non-Arabs. So our audiences were a real great mix. And we wanted to send a statement about Saudi Arabia as a country and the people who live here as a people, that we are just as ordinary people as everyone in the West. We enjoy a good laugh and we are social with our families. And this is one of the big shows we did inside Saudi. And it was just an amazing time. And the people that came up with me through these shows are now household names. I mean, you probably know the guy on the top left there, Omar, and then there's Fahal Bateri and KK, Khalid Khalifa. And these were some of the first people to get up onto the stage and to perform comedy. And it really went through. This is some of our audiences before the show. Look at the excitement in those faces and the queues outside the show there. Wonderful, wonderful, great memories of these. And these are our VIP guests right at the front. Our sponsors used to send their executives with their families from Riyadh and from Jeddah to come to Dhahran to see our shows. And look at the smiles on those people's faces. And this is what we dealt with. This is what our shows are all about, to spreading humor and laughter and positivity, but in a very, very nice family kind of environment. Then I was invited to one of my most challenging shows. I went to Kabul, Afghanistan, to perform comedy there. And it was just incredible. I myself and Peter Howarth Lees was the agent who got us this job. And there was Al Dusham from New York was with us. And the three of us went to Kabul, and this is my Nepalese guard who is guarding me. Of course, my weapon was the mic, but he has a proper weapon there to guard us. And it was an amazing, amazing weekend that we had in Kabul. I was met at the airport by two soldiers from the British military. So all three of us, Peter, Al, and myself, got into this Humvee vehicle, and they gave us this safety briefing. And in fact, why don't I show you the safety briefing that we got? Because we were on our way to the Green Zone and the British Embassy in Kabul. And this is a picture from there. And these two soldiers told us how we should behave in case we were attacked on our way to the embassy. Have a listen to this. I'll just play the video. Give me 2 seconds.
That's obviously if we can't use it. The doors will be locked throughout the journey. If for some reason you do need to unlock them yourselves, it's just by his left knee. Okay. And it's simply clear as lock. Clear rolled out. I get that unlocks all doors. Yeah. It's going to be quite hard, but if obviously something does happen, try and keep it as low as possible. We'll obviously control it. We'll obviously direct you other than that. Happy so far? Good. Anyone got any medical things like penicillin or? No, I think so. My vitamin C. Great. There we go. Thank you.
I have a feeling you guys have done this before, so I feel in good hands.
Once or twice. Air Delta 143, Quebec, Langdale, over.
Wow, so that was us going through the streets of Kabul towards the green zone where the embassy was based. And as you saw, he gave us a safety briefing there and said that if we are attacked on the way, that we want you to follow our lead and to follow us. And you know what? I'm going to level with you, ladies and gentlemen. I was looking around me and I thought to myself, I'm the only brown guy in this car. If anything happens and if the Taliban attack us in this room, I'm going to get out of this car immediately and say, Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers. Where have you been? These infidels have kidnapped me and they're, I don't know, they've been driving me around Kabul. I love you, Habibi. But I'm very pleased to say it didn't happen. And we had an amazing, amazing time in Kabul. We performed at the British Embassy. We performed at the American Embassy, and then we went out and we met Afghani children and we did the comedy show for them. So the most amazing, 3 days of my life. It was a long weekend in Kabul. But can you see how sometimes, if I could link it back to the lessons learned from here, that you get offered this opportunity, which at the beginning frightens the hell out of you. And I will admit, I was frightened to go into a war zone, but because I took that step, I had a memory which I will never ever forget in my life. I learned so much about myself and about my abilities and overcoming fears. So again, I hope there's a little lesson there. So 2017 was probably one of the most beautiful, beautiful years of my life and for my family, because it was the year in which both of our children got married. And this is my family, and my wife and my our three children, and Nadia, who's in the middle there, is my daughter, and she got married in London. And right next to her is our son Wasim, who also got married in that year. And the little guy there, Harun, is wow, he's 15 now. So it was 2017 was an amazing, amazing year. These outfits, by the way, were designed by my wife Shafia. And it was just an incredible year in our lives. And so both of the older children were married. And then the lights went off in our lives. This next section is going to be a little bit difficult to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm going to do my best. A few days after Wasim got married, back in December 2017, my wife Shafia was kind of taken ill in Pakistan. And we had to rush her to the hospital, and she went into critical care. And unfortunately, 5 days later, on the 5th of January 2018, she left this world. We had been married for 28 years, and she was my best friend. We had made plans to grow old together and to see our grandchildren together and enjoy our lives and to enjoy retirement from Aramco and to move back to UK. And in 5 straight days, all the dreams disappeared. So on the 5th of January, when Shafia passed away, as I said, my best friend and someone that I'd had all these memories with unexpectedly left us. I got one of the biggest messages from the universe to me. And everything around me was shouting at me, it's impossible to live without your life partner. And this is one of the biggest challenges I ever had to face in my life. How do you pick up the pieces again? And again, this is going back to the definition of resilience. When life throws something at you so big, and I'm sure there are people in this audience today who've lost loved ones, maybe your spouse, maybe a parent, brother or sister, or even a child, which is one of the worst kinds of trauma to have. At the time, it feels your world has collapsed. I thought to myself, what would Shafia want? What would she want? And she would want me to stay happy, and she would want me to prove the world wrong, because the world was telling me Rahman, and my environment was telling me, Rahman, you can't continue. It's not going to happen. So how did I do it? Well, one or two things went through in my mind. And the first thing I said to myself is, the mission has to continue. And the analogy that I can give you is that I felt I was the captain of this plane. Shafi and I were both pilots on this plane. And we still have passengers who need to get safely down on the ground, our children. I may have lost my co-pilot, but I still have to get this plane down on the ground. So I needed to pick myself up, and I needed to have this feeling that the mission must continue. The living have to keep living. And I'm doing this in honor of Shafia's memory. I have an overriding feeling of an attitude of gratitude, and I always have had in my life. So I give gratitude and I say Alhamdulillah for 28 amazing years with an amazing lady. I may not even have had 1 year with such an amazing person. So I give thanks. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, one of the biggest things, antidotes to depression, is gratitude. And we Muslims believe very, very strongly in this when we say, Alhamdulillah, when someone passes away. It was the will of Allah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. From Him we come, and to Him we must return. From Allah we come. And the third thing is that I decided that I was going to become, in honor of my wife, an even better version of myself. Even better version of myself, to then be a better father, be a better son, be a better employee for my company, to be a better person. And I'll tell you a little bit about how I did that. And I want to help others. I've always been very passionate about helping other people to become the best version they can. And partly why I'm doing this webinar is to hope that I can touch someone out there and to inspire someone to be a better version of themselves. Now, I'd like to tell you that all of those years of comedy, performance, and living out of business lounges and hotels had taken its toll on my health. This is me at the Jeddah Comedy Club about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago maybe, and had a fantastic time. And performing was my life. But you can see that I got seriously overweight, and all of my functions were heading in the wrong way. The sugar levels, the blood pressure, and the weight, of course, and blood pressure. And although nothing went into the danger zones, my doctor was saying, Rahman, be careful. You're getting into your 40s and 50s, and these are the silent killers. But I didn't have time. How many of you say this? I don't have time. I don't have the ability. I'm too busy to exercise, and I just can't control my food. Ladies and gentlemen, I decided I was going to take control of my life, just like I took control of my life when I was 11 years old. At the age of, in my mid-50s, I took control of my life. I was fighting this thing that the universe was telling me. It's impossible to get fit and lose weight. I proved them wrong. I went from 105 kilograms, and today, Alhamdulillah, Rahman version 2 is born, and I'm now 78.3 kilograms, and I'm still losing more. I run and I eat sensibly. I train every day, and I train 7 days a week, and I run 5 kilometers every single day of my life. And there was a time, believe me, I couldn't even run 1 kilometer. So the new Rahman was born. This is what happened to me during the pandemic, ladies and gentlemen. I've got a lot of my friends saying, Wallah, the pandemic, I swear to God, I've started eating and eating and eating. I'm sitting at home, my wife is cooking all this food for me. I can't stop eating. I did the opposite. This is the last, I think, roughly 20 weeks of my life. Starting at the beginning of June, I was 87.6 kilograms at the beginning of June. You can see that I set myself a target of losing 0.4 kilograms per week consistently. And that's the dashed line. And the solid line is my actual weight, which I plot every Friday. Consistent weight loss, because I figured out what I was doing wrong. It was the consistency, and it was about knowing my reason why. Why do I want to lose weight? And when you connect to an emotional why, instead of a cosmetic why, you achieve great things. So now you are seeing in front of you Rahman version 2. And right after I finish this presentation, I'm going to go out and run today's 5 kilometers around the Dahran camp. So if you are out there and you see me, toot your horn, because it all helps encourage me. So I am now going to live life. I eat clean and I train dirty. I'm sure you know exactly what that means. And Alhamdulillah, I have one last surprise for you before I end this presentation and I start taking questions. Do you remember back in 1974, I told you that I did that talent contest? My one single regret from that day was that those were not the days of the iPhones. Everybody took photos and put them on. And, you know, I would have loved to show you a photo of me as an 11-year-old winning that competition. And that's been one of my biggest regrets in my life. Well, you know what happened? A few months ago, I was talking to someone on Facebook, and this lady, she approached me and she said, "Excuse me, you look really familiar to me. Are you the Rahman who won the talent contest back in this housing estate in London?" I said, "Yes, absolutely I am. Who are you?" She said, "I am the person who came second on that same competition." I said, "Oh, wow, amazing. How nice to hear from you. I have such great memories from that day." She said, "You know, I often take out that photograph and look at it." I said, "Photograph? Wait, what photograph?" She said, "You mean the newspaper guy didn't give you a copy of the photograph?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, here you go." This is, ladies and gentlemen, a photograph of Rahman Akhtar, aged 11. Can you see me in the middle? How proudly I'm holding up my number 1 sign there. I was wearing this little nose and these glasses and my dad's Salah cap, the white cap that he wore when he prayed Salah. I invented this character called Professor Potty. And this was the day that my life totally changed. In fact, no, let me put that another way. This is the day I changed my life. It's more proactive than that. You have to take action, which changes your life. I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, that impossible is absolutely nothing. And so for me, I might be in my mid-50s now and getting ready in a few years to retire and maybe return to the UK. I'd love to stay in the Middle East longer. But for me, the story continues with Rahman version 2, maybe Rahman version 3 and 4, who knows? And for me, inshallah, the best is yet to come because I am resilient and I'm ready. So if you would like to follow me and see what happens to Rahman next, you can follow me on Instagram. I am simply at Hello Rahman and spelled Rahman with an R-E-H-M-A-N. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have seen within this story many lessons that we can apply in our workplace. And I would like to end the presentation there, and maybe Sarah can fire some questions at me, but I'm ready to take your questions. Thank you so much.
What an inspiring speech, Rahman. I personally enjoy hearing all these lessons learned from such an experienced guy like you, and how you move on after you're passed away from your wife. And it does really teach us a lot of lesson in how to adapt with life changes and how to be resilient in life and at work as well. Thank you for sharing this information, and we are ready now to take some questions. So ladies and gentlemen, if you have any question, please let Okay, we have one question here.
Yep.
What's the biggest challenge you face in Saudi Arabia?
Well, you know, initially when we first came here, settling down in a country with all these new cultures and these new norms, I'd grown up in the UK, you know, where it's not a very touchy-feely culture. And Saudi Arabia, mashallah, is a very handshaking and a hugging and a kissing culture. And you know, I saw the men, you know, when I first came here, and they would do all this kissing, and I would watch the same men kissing on one day, and it was like, mwah, mwah. And I see the same 2 men kissing on the following days, it was mwah, mwah, mwah. And I think, how do they know what the rule is that day? Who's leading? Who's following? And I thought, this is crazy. I need to know the rules. I was so confused. And I remember thinking to myself, well, there must be some rules. And I started making up my own rules. And I had a little theory about if you were in Riyadh, for example, perhaps, that's where the royal family live. Let's keep it nice and straightforward and just go, mwah, mwah, keep it that way, right? And then maybe in Jeddah Ghair, freestyle, baby. Just do the hugs and kisses, whatever you like. It's Jeddah. And I thought in the Eastern province, why don't we go for those nose touches? There's very cute nose touching kissing, which I've seen a lot of our security guards as well, for example. But you have to be careful with the nose kisses, because if you happen to have a short nose and long lips, it could get really awkward, So some of the challenges I faced of just growing up into a new country, but being serious for a second, it was very challenging moving to a huge company like Saudi Aramco. We have over 70,000 people, and to find your place, find your brand within a company of so many people. And I really feel for young professionals as they join the company, our professional development program people, and how do you find your brand and how do you find what you want to do in life? So, but all challenges are there to be overcome. And alhamdulillah, we did. And I found my passion.
Excellent. So the second question is, how did you adapt Agile in your story?
Well, I hope that if you were listening carefully, you saw lots and lots of different areas where I had to be Agile. And as Sarah mentioned at the beginning, my career at Saudi Aramco has not just been, there you go, I came in as an SAP consultant, and then that's where I stayed. I was always looking at the next move. I was always thinking, well, where else could I use my skills? So if I could give you a summary of what I've done in Saudi Aramco, started off as an SAP consultant, and I did technical writing on the training courses. I then became the supervisor of second line support. Then I worked in training and change management. I worked as team leader, as supervisor for the communications team. Then I was one of the lead trainers on the Change Management Academy. For 11 years, I worked in change management. And then I came into another area of HR, human resources, where I work in professional development. So can you see, I have had to be very agile and see how can I contribute more and more to the company as I pick up these skills. So what you see in front of you now is Rahman, which is a mix from every single job I have held in my life, and I'm using each one of those skills. So that's the answer there of the agility.
Okay, third question we have.
Great questions, by the way. I love these. It means people are listening.
Yes, they are. Of course, it's really inspiring and teach us the attribute of being a leader and take the lead of our life. And definitely you are one of those who drove their life toward the dream they are planning to have in their life. So very well done, Rahman. How you translate your experience to the Saudi young generation?
Well, I would say more than 90% of my job at the moment, and even my personal passions, are in this area. So I work for the graduate development and onboarding team, which is part of career development division, and is part of management and professional development. So most of my day is spent in the company of young Saudi professionals. So we have many, many touch points with them. So not only do I help to do the Saudi new hire orientation at the beginning, we introduce them to the company. We have many touch points along their career journey where we help them grow into these professional capacities. So we do career transition workshops. We do career guidance for them. And I personally mentor and coach many, many Saudi professionals. So look, I've got a small number of years left before I leave Kingdom. And my stated aim, I actually tell my boss this, I want these to be the most productive years of my life, and the best way I can serve you is to pass on my skills. So even outside of work, I coach people, and most of that is with Saudis.
We need more of Rahman Akhtar in Saudi.
I'm sure they're there. I'm sure there are lots of people that think like me.
Okay, I have an interesting question here. What is your advice to people who are stressed or afraid to talk in front of people, especially presentations and so on? Because we have a lot of people who is really confident and they have a lot of knowledge, but they have this weakness of talking in front of people. So what is your advice?
Sarah, I could do a whole hours of presentations on this area. And I know that this is a very, very popular question. And I am one of the people in my company who help the young people. For example, I get professional development program people who've maybe been in the company for 1 or 2 years. Suddenly they get asked to do a presentation to the VP or a senior manager. And they get really, really nervous and scared. So I will take them down. I will sit down and say, okay, breathe. Let's give you some tips on how you can do this without looking nervous and getting through it. And so there are many areas I can guide you in with this. If I were to give you one of the top tips, would be to stop the nervous self-talk. The negative self-talk is one of the biggest enemies of being confident. It's when your mind starts telling you that you're not going to do it. And I remember just a couple of years back, I was mentoring 2 Saudi young people, one guy and one girl, and they were going to be master of ceremony at an award ceremony at work. And it was going to be attended by the vice president. And I remember the young lady, in fact, her name was also similar to your name, but I won't give her surname away. It was Sarah, and she kept saying to her, you know what, Rahman, I'm going to suck. I'm going to forget my words. I'm going to be really nervous on the day. I'm going to be really bad. And I said to her, you know, Sarah, you're right. If you keep telling yourself you're going to fail, you're going to fail. So you need to stop the negative self-talk, and you need to start getting more and give yourself positive affirmations. I'm going to be the best on the day, and I'm going to try my best, and I'm not going to be scared of failure, and I'm going to be positive. And you know what? We took her 1 week later. She emceed that event with the Saudi young guy. She outshone the guy. She was so amazing on stage. She was a natural. But all she needed to do was stop the negative self-talk that she kept telling herself that she was going to fail. So ladies and gentlemen, the lesson here is whether you tell yourself you can or you tell yourself you can't, you're right. Either way, you're right.
That's inspiring answer, actually. So we have a question here. What is the advice that you are giving to Saudi women?
This has been one of my biggest frustrations since coming to Saudi Arabia in 2001, in the last 20 years. And believe me, I am so happy at the changes that we've seen in the last few years. I always felt that the women were a great wasted resource in this country because, and I'll tell you why I can say that personally, because I helped train a lot of the young Saudis from the very first day I joined the company. So when I was on the SAP help desk, I was a supervisor, half the class was women, and they completely didn't fit the stereotype that we hear about Saudi women. They were smart, they were intelligent, they were adaptable, they were confident speakers. And I thought, what's this crazy notion we have that they're these shy, retiring people just waiting for the men to tell them? So I knew that we were wasting this resource. Lately in Saudi Aramco, we have a great drive towards women and diversity. We have organizations where we hold events, and I am a great advocate of women and female empowerment. And I work in a division where my supervisor is a female, my division head is a female, and until recently, my executive boss was a female, and she retired recently, the great Huda Ghassan. And she was the first kind of executive director at Saudi Aramco. So I spend my time in the company of some amazing females, and more power to you.
Really good to hear that. Okay, so we have a question here. What is the biggest accomplishment for you in Saudi Arabia and in your whole career experience? So they want to know two of the most biggest accomplishment in Saudi and outside of Saudi.
So at work and maybe outside of work, yeah? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Great. I think that if I were to say my greatest accomplishment inside Saudi Aramco has been that I have been able to maintain my passion for work for 20 years. So no matter what I've been given, sometimes look, you get given work that you think, oh God, am I going to enjoy this project? But I bring my passion to it regardless. And I do it in a way that feeds my passion. And I have a passion for so many things, but mainly around public speaking, presentations, inspiring people, motivating people. I love doing that. So I just find an aspect of that project which feeds my passion. So one of my biggest accomplishments is I built a brand for myself. So many people in Saudi Aramco do know me as the person they can rely on to deliver a boring topic in an exciting way. So that's a brand I've kind of developed for myself. So I would feel that making a name for myself in a company as large as Saudi Aramco for 20 years has been a great passion. And you know, I'm known from the graduate employees who just joined from day one, right up to our senior executives, who I sometimes go and coach on speaking with impact, as you said at the beginning, which is fantastic. Now, outside of work, I'll give a very brief answer. A lot of people who come to Saudi Arabia and work really sit in a bubble. They don't really want to get to know the culture, and they don't want to get out and do things. And I feel that I wanted to be different. I didn't want to be the typical expatriate. I wanted to contribute something back to Saudi society. And I think through being one of the early innovators in the Saudi comedy scene, I feel we opened the doors for a lot of the great comedians now who are in the entertainment industry. And I feel very proud of that contribution to Saudi society, to the arts.
Yeah, I personally think that the most accomplishment you are doing and you are still doing is influencing people.
I'm doing my best. Absolutely.
What's the meaning of life if you are not influencing people? So absolutely. I can see right here, a lot of people, they would like to talk to you after the session for a consultation. So sure. That's what you are influencing. So I think the most thing that you are doing and the biggest accomplishment is really influencing.
Hook up with me on Instagram. You see my feed there, and most welcome to direct message me. And I'm, you know, I'm one person, but I try to spread myself as thinly as possible. So I never say no. And alhamdulillah, we'll find time, inshallah.
So is there anything you have before we wrap up our webinar for tonight?
No, just to say, really as a wrap-up message, that of course I'm very thankful to you and then also for Mohammed and all the executives from PMI KSA who thought of taking this challenging presentation, because I know that you usually have technical presentations and maybe that's what some of your members expect. But today what we've done is we've thought out of the box and we've done something on soft skills, but I hope you found it just as valuable as a technical presentation. I have certainly really enjoyed delivering this for you. And I hope that out there somewhere we've inspired some person to become version 2 of themselves. And just want to wrap up and say thank you so much. It's a bit surreal when you're talking and you can't see anybody or hear anybody, but I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Mohammed, and all the PMI KSA.
We're happy to have you very soon after the pandemic, and you perform your own show and people can see you in person. But what we are doing now is resilience. What we are doing now is agile. We are not trying to say, oh, we don't have events, we cannot. No, we still can deliver. We still can influence from your own office.
Absolutely.
So, on behalf of PMI team, I would like to thank you for your time and for your great inspiring presentation for tonight. We really enjoyed and we have learned a lot of lessons, and we are looking forward to have you with us in person in our future webinar. Thank you, Rahman Akhtar. Once again, I thank you all for asking questions and participating with us. It is really one of the best webinars that we have with PMI. So thank you, Rahman Akhtar. Thank you.
I'm very touched by those words, Sarah, and I can see the questions are still coming in thick and fast. So people obviously haven't had enough, but we have 1 hour and alhamdulillah, it's nearly 7 o'clock. So now I must get into my kit and go for a run. And I look forward to hearing from you people.
Never give up. Never give up.
Never give up. That's a great lesson to finish on.
Thank you so much.
Impossible is nothing.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye. You too.